welcome back to the Home Slice. I have a question for you. Have you ever looked at two knives online, been shopping, and thought, oh, does this one that's 0.14 inches thick but fully flat ground slice more nicely than this one that's 0.10 inches thick but has a high flat ground or a saber grind on the blade? Well, if you've ever been there, I have good news for you. After watching this video, you ought to never have to ask that question again. Why is this so hard to determine? Well, for example, here we have a Bark River that's 0.16 or 4 millimeters thick, and it's full convex, but they start out with a full flat grind. And here we have a Firebird knife in D2, which is 0.14 inches thick or 3.5 millimeters. So this one, the blade is a bit thinner, but the grind is also not as high. So how can we know which one is going to be a more satisfying slicer? Which one, if you put it through a material, is going to go through the most efficiently? This problem is compounded when you're just looking at knives online on a screen. How are we to know, especially when you can't get a grasp of the size differences on a screen? Well, we'll just have to ask Thor. Just kidding, that was a joke. I'd like to introduce a new metric to the knife world. It's called grind slope, okay? The problem arises from the fact that this grind, it's very difficult for the layman, the average person, to get an angle measurement of this. It should also be noted that overall thickness and thickness behind the edge have a big bearing on slicing efficiency. But for today, we're going to focus on demystifying the third variable, and that variable is the angle of this grind. This is the rough outline of a Benchmade bug out. And while it's very difficult to get an accurate reading and distinguish between the exact angles, I'm going to suggest to you that this is a problem that we can solve with some 6th grade geometry. So just for now, let's consider that the flat part of the knife is not part of the equation, because in this scenario with the bug out, it does not really affect your slicing profile. At that point, we're left with knowing, these are each millimeters, that the grind of a Benchmade bug out is the same as the overall thickness. It is 2 millimeters at its beginning. And if you do some simple measurements, we'll exclude this side of the knife and just consider this side. Well, this is our starting point. The grind is 19 millimeters tall. And if you've cut it in half here, this is 1 millimeter. Roughly. There's a mathematical operator known as slope. Slope is defined as rise divided by run. The grind slope on a Benchmade bug out then is 19 millimeters of rise divided by 1 millimeter of run, yielding a total grind slope of 19. Now you can do this on any knife simply by looking at it on your computer. You don't have to buy them to find out which one has a nicer, thinner grind. You can actually calculate it previous to purchasing. And I'm about to show you how that works. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is go to your wife's sewing kit and steal her measuring tape. What we need to do to determine this metric for any knife is take the maximum height of the grind and then divide it by the thickness. I recommend doing this in millimeters as it will yield more memorable numbers. So say you want to find out, hey, is a Benchmade bug out thinner, or is a Giant Mouse Ace Biblio a thinner grind slope? Well, first thing you got to do is look up the length of the Benchmade bug out, 3.24 inches, and look up the length of a Giant Mouse Ace Biblio. Now then you want to get some pictures, some clear sideways photos of these guys downloaded, and size them exactly to the length that you found. So this is the size of the actual knife. Then just take your measuring tape and measure the height of that grind. So for this guy, we've got a grind height of 24 millimeters. For the bug out, I've zoomed these already so that they are properly sized. For the bug out, as we already established, we've got a grind height of about 19 millimeters. Now all we have to do is some quick calculations. Now we know that the Benchmade bug out is roughly 2 millimeters in thickness, and so we just divide 19 millimeters by 1, which obviously is 19. So that leaves us with the Biblio. The Biblio is 3 millimeters thick, so half of its thickness would yield 1.5 millimeters, and if we divide the 24 millimeter grind height by 1.5, we get 16. So for those of you who are out there and you have been wondering, should I buy a Benchmade bug out or a Giant Mouse Ace Biblio? Which one is going to have the more efficient slicing profile? You're welcome. Now you know the Benchmade bug out is a slightly thinner profile if that's the purpose that you're buying it for. So in conclusion, if you've ever purchased two separate knives because you were wondering which one slices better, I've now given you a simple, free, easy method to determine beforehand whether you actually need to buy the two knives for testing or whether there'll be one with a clear advantage. Just for the sake of fun, I find that I really start enjoying how a knife kind of goes through an apple or something like that right around the 14 mark. 13, 14, it starts to get really enjoyable. Below that, I think it's not a bad idea to go that thick for work knives or if you're into sort of tactical knives. But if you want a slicer, I think upwards of 13, 14, things start to get really fun. What I want you to do with that? Well, I just want to give you that because you home buyers can, never guess again whether a grind will be nice and thin for slicing on a flat ground knife or saber ground knife. Now, there are some differences with hollow grind and convex. They behave a little differently. But a huge portion of the market you'll now be able to diagnose that grind slope with a lot of precision. Knife reviewers, man, if you're a knife reviewer who is watching this video right now, please include this metric as one of your measurements, because then, in addition to the fun testing that you're doing, you can say this one has a grind slope of 13, and that's as opposed to this other one that has a grind slope of 14, and you can actually make objective comparisons that will really ground your video for your viewers. They'll really be able to make more informed decisions. I will just say, if we all start using tools like this and demand satisfyingly thin profiles on our slicing knives, if reviewers use it, if buyers use it, then the industry will have to follow and provide more fun, thin slicing knives in good steels for all of us. If we choose based on what is the best slicing profile, then manufacturers are going to take note, and it's going to transform the way that knives are made. So let's do that. That would be awesome, I think. One quick note is that Opinel that I sent to Pete, I built it for the purpose of slicing, and it's 1 millimeter thick, and it's about 11 inches in height, which puts the grind slope somewhere up around 22. And man, if you have ever cut with something that thin, you can really tell the difference when you've got a super thinned out, no compromise slicer. So that's really fun. That's all I got for today. I hope that helps you guys, and I hope that you enjoy it. Peace out from the Home Slice.